Hello, welcome to another episode of Faith and Geekery. Tonight we are talking about musicals and the theatre. So if you are used to treading the boards, or if you occasionally go, or if you've only watched things on the big screen or on the small screen, it's over to us to be thinking about that tonight. Whether we're kind of used to it or not, or whether we're behind the scenes or in front of the scenery instead. And I think it's just me at the moment. I'm not sure if anybody else will spring up, but here we are. And please feel free to leave a comment or say anything. And the first question, of course, is always going to be, what geeky things have we been up to this week? And I believe there should be a little oh no, that's the wrong one already. Great. What geeky things have you been up to this week in our geeky news section? I think I would like to share a couple of little bits and pieces from our Discord, which there is the links in the doobly-doo. There is some nice pictures. I think technically Luke had actually posted these up last week, and this was kind of along our dinosaur themed, and so these were his lizard people, which have been fantastically painted. The next thing to show you is some wands. Now the reason for the wands, the wands kind of come with a bit of a longer story, really, because both my kids are into Harry Potter. We're just making our way through the second book, and they're only just into it. Kind of, they're quite young still, and it's. Oh, there you go. We've got a message from Luke already. Good evening. Can't join on screen due to illness, but glad to be here. Oh, bless you. Well, I hope you're feeling better soon, Luke. And fantastic painting of the lizard folk, whatever they may be called. The reason for these ones is because our kids on our half term we went to platform 9 3/4, which was fantastic, and we decided to once in a lifetime to kind of spend a little bit of money on our children, and we got them official ones. And then as we kind of started to got them in the car to go home, we were kind of going, oh, actually these are actually really expensive, and these kids could break them very quickly, and technically they're not really kind of toys. They're in presentation cases and all this kind of stuff, and we're like, so they are nicely kind of put away, kind of safe. And these are actually 3D printed versions of the same ones that they have. So I feel as if the kids are made out like bandits in some respects. They've got two ones for the price of one, but these ones have been kind of home printed and then painted and then varnished to make it look as if they are the real thing. But these are hopefully a little bit more easier to play with, and there'll be less kind of worry over them expelliarmusing each other and all that kind of stuff, and when they have to drop the wands as well. So that is a little thing there, and the next thing to show you is going to be so the geeky news that I've been following up on. Really interesting if you've been following Stranger Things at all. Linda Hamilton is set to join the series, and I suspect she might kind of be in like a military like character, because that's her type. That's how she usually kind of the pigeonhole that she gets put into is that kind of military-ish sort of woman. What was that? Did the kids paint them? No, I'm afraid I painted them because I'm too much of a perfectionist. And I sort of said, look, here's. I think I needed to try and sell the ones to them that they were so good, and therefore they were just as good as the things that they just bought, so they could actually enjoy playing with them. So I did try to paint them quite accurately, if that is fair to say, but I'm sure they would have done a fantastic job as well. So kind of that's really interesting regarding the ones. But regarding Linda Hamilton joining Netflix, so obviously she's famous for kind of Terminator stuff, and it'd be interesting to see what kind of part she plays in the Netflix series Stranger Things, but I won't give any spoilers away for that. The last thing is, so I came across just a couple of days ago, and this kind of shows what kind of algorithms and things I'm into social media. This is from Bad Science Jokes on Facebook, I think on Facebook. But anyway, someone's discovered the original Tetris manual, and believe it or not, these fantastic kind of shapes from Tetris all have names. Who knew that they all had names other than like 4x1 or L shape and reverse L shape is what I used to call them. But look, behold, they actually have official names such as Smash Boy, Tiwi, Rhode Island Z, Cleveland Z, Blue Ricky, Orange Ricky, and Hero. Which I quite like the hero idea, especially when you've been saving up for a forlong and you eventually get it. So I can see how that one's classified as a hero. And I think that's everything in regards to geeky news. But please do post a comment about what you've been up to this week. What geeky things have we been up to this week? And there you go. I'm just throwing that into the various platforms and see if people get back to us or not. So tonight we are talking about musicals, and I don't know about you, where again, as I said at the introduction, of how much are we into musicals, whether we've kind of lived and breathed on them or whether we've hardly touched them because there's like a stigma with them or otherwise. I thought I'd call tonight Don't Say That Word, because that is the kind of there's a lot of superstition about that, and I think there is a lot of superstition with theatre, isn't there, as well? And so it'll be very interesting to talk about and cover kind of musicals and theatre. For me, I think theatre was a bit of an unknown to me as a kid. I kind of knew, I was aware of it, but it was kind of not our thing. But I remember the first time that we went, because it was for a church outing, because they were doing dun 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 Lion Witch in the Wardrobe, and so that was the kind of the first opportunity. Even though it was like an amateur production, it was quite a cool thing to do. As Luke's saying, it used to be a big treat to go to the theatre to watch a musical as a family. We all loved them. Yeah, and it's interesting because I think you're either a family that does or you're a family that don't so much. So my parents never really did any of that sort of thing. But there's definitely some families who would go to the pantomime and that kind of stuff. And again, I think we just didn't really do it at all. And so it was only when I was kind of a church outing, and then eventually when I was at university, big shout out to Paul and Joe for kind of selling the idea of going to the theatre properly. And again, faith played a big part in this sort of kind of the very first one was going to see Jesus Christ Superstar, which again was quite an interesting take on it. And Luke is also put in there. We also used to watch those Find a Star competition shows when they would find their leading actor. Yeah, like is it kind of Who Wants to Be Mary, and the Sound of Music, Maria, and things like that, wasn't there, on the BBC with Graham Norton and etc., and Andrew Lloyd Webber for his ones as well. It definitely became more popular and less of a class thing. They're trying to kind of really open up the doors to more people, and I think the amateur groups as well really kind of try and push that door and kind of really encourage kind of more local homegrown talent and that kind of stuff rather than just at the West End. I think for me and for many, kind of the theatre is this ability to kind of go and see real people performing, and you almost kind of have that suspension of belief going there, because you can kind of really allow yourself to believe that these are real people, that they are real characters rather than just being acted out on the stage. And so I think it really can kind of embody and enable kind of real emotive value and purpose and real kind of, not purpose, real kind of moments of closeness. And usually you can sort of say, like a picture paints 1,000 words, and I think a piece of art can often help reflect, and therefore a theatrical piece of art, a musical, can really kind of do so much more. You just have to kind of look at Billy Elliot and the way that kind of really had an impact on kind of exploring kind of the alpha male sort of side of stuff, and the way that we kind of view history, and again, just with a recent example of Hamilton, of just having something that is an old story, but just with a modern twist, with music, with dance, with kind of diversity, suddenly can kind of really echo and really show something a bit more, sort of reverberate around, and kind of really shake you up to kind of some this brilliant kind of idea and understanding, far more than maybe just reading the original script or even original story, or flicking back through history. That the ability to kind of put a kind of a musical number to something, and to maybe play around the characters is so much more than what it could be on its own, if that makes sense. I was trying to think about, and I was trying to make a list actually of the various kind of musicals and bits and pieces that I've been into, and I wonder, and that'll be, I guess, the next sort of question to folks is kind of what stands out for you in theatre and the music, the musicals. Is it something that you saw as a kid? Is it something that you kind of return back to season after season? Can't multitask, I'm trying to type and talk at the same time. What stands out for you as a musical or a show at the theatre? Because I think we may each have our own kind of like little kind of preference, our own kind of special thing, and whether that's kind of because it reflects where we were with who we were, or whether we kind of just had that special moment of realization, or that story just had such an impact because of those physical people on stage. For me, I think alongside going to the theatre was one thing, but for me, kind of being having the opportunity at school to kind of do kind of Little Shop of Horrors, for me was kind of an eye-opener. I'd never kind of, and again they talk about kind of the bug, don't they, catching the bug of theatre, and that for me had passed me way by, mainly because our drama teacher used to call me by my older brother's name, or rather Mr. Stennett, because he couldn't remember my first name, and therefore I always kind of bore a bit of a grudge against him. But yeah, Little Shop of Horrors at sixth form for me was a pivotal moment, and really kind of opened my eyes to do something a little bit more, to see kind of what value you could really place into something, and seeing it from scratch, or originally from the film. I guess I think I'd seen the film at that point. Luke saying, I love seeing The Lion King. I love the film since childhood, but the stage show is incredible. The costume and the staging and dance were amazing. Yeah, I can't remember. I've not actually been to see Lion King. It's on our list to go and see, but I can't remember if it's got the original music numbers or whether they've kind of got adaptations, because a lot of them kind of like to kind of go, well, that's the film, here's the musical, and let's alter those. I know that somebody was really disappointed going to see what's Whoopi Goldberg as the nun. So I want to say Nuns on the Run, but that's a completely different film. What's it called? Anyway, Whoopi Goldberg in the Habit, yeah, because it's a musical, you would kind of expect it's the same songs, but actually they've kind of gone in a completely different direction, and that's maybe something to do with copyright and kind of the original rights of the songs. But it was always a bit of a surprise if doesn't have, if you're going with certain expectations, hopefully expectations are kind of blown away and completely transformed. But sometimes they're kind of going, yeah, but they didn't sing the song. And Sister Act, thank you, completely. It completely slipped away from my head. So thank you, Luke. So kind of, because I think there are sometimes, even when you go to kind of see concerts of famous musicians, don't you? And you kind of want to hear the well-known ones, and yet they turn up and they want to basically move on from that old stuff, and they kind of play their new album, and everyone's there going, oh, but come on, play the old one, play the one that we all came for, And I think sometimes things like Sister Act or the kind of shows that have been adapted from movies or otherwise, where you expect kind of one thing and unfortunately you get something else, can be a bit of a disappointment, really. And another one for me, another musical for me, and I say it with a bit of a smile, is We Will Rock You. And I remember going to see this for the first time with Paul and Joe, and I was single at the time. I was kind of I was told a bit of a treat, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is all right. And then I just heard about kind of Freddie Mercury, and I was there kind of going, okay, what is this thing that they're taking me to? And it was a real treat, and I was trying to be really gracious, but at the same time, and I think they'd both clicked, lovely couple, that they were there kind of going, what's up? And I was like, well, is it because I'm a bloke and I'm single that you're trying to kind of send me to this kind of Freddie Mercury thing? Do you think I'm gay? Is that sort of thing? Don't mind sort of thing. But it was hilarious that I just had no idea what to expect. And so to go to We Will Rock You wasn't like a biopic or anything like that, even though I have enjoyed kind of kind of Queen stuff and Freddie Mercury stuff since then. Again, titles of that have dropped out of my mind tonight. But yeah, no, it was just funny that I was kind of going with really peculiar expectations, or wondering why they would take me to these sort of things. But We Will Rock You was fantastic. It's kind of just imaginative, completely off the wall. Is it Ben Elton, and others written it, and it's just it's hilarious. But interestingly, we've been to see it twice. Been to see it kind of once in single, and then the second time on honeymoon. And I found even in those kind of hours, it was actually quite different, that they'd changed and updated some of the references. I think sometimes they actually had to officially change some of them because they were no longer allowed to say certain things about certain people. Kind of We Will Rock You was quite a nice kind of contemporary thing of using old music contemporized, but then kind of gone off completely creatively. And I won't share any spoilers. And so therefore I don't need this spoilers thing. For me, kind of, it has that ability to kind of go to the theatre, to be able to help kind of suspend belief, to be immersed in a world, in a context, in a story, and therefore it allows you to kind of really kind of get a bit of distance and see from a different perspective of stuff. And Luke has just reminded me of something else that I have been to see and I completely forgot, which is I went to see Wicked and really enjoyed the songs. It's one I'll go back to and listen to the soundtrack again and again. And somebody is trying to sell me streaming advice. Oh, thanks. I'm not interested. But yeah, kind of Wicked again is one of those things, and it's these kind of modern musicals that really kind of bounce around and really sing, don't they? As in kind of just really kind of make themselves known and become such standout things. And I think some of the songs are so kind of amazing, and they're just kind of they can't. I mean, let's say does Gravity kind of carry the rest of the musical? Defying Gravity. Maybe that is a bit of a slippery slope, but I think there are, I think is it Adina Menzel kind of really helped that number and helped that kind of performance, and for Wicked to then become firmly kind of part of the landscape of Broadway and the theatre. But a part of me, I kind of go, this is fine, but part of this is rewriting history, of rewriting the Wizard of Oz, and kind of on the back of that sort of stuff. I know that's not likely to be a popular perspective, but that for me, it feels Wicked has got fantastic musical numbers and popular, and that kind of stuff is fantastic, but it feels a little bit kind of that its success is partly because it's kind of on the back of the Wizard of Oz, which in itself is such an amazing kind of film that, could it have been strong enough without that link? Jury's out. Good evening, Emma. Saw my neighbour Totoro on stage last December, and the puppetry was amazing. Very cool. I don't even know what that is. Saw neighbour Totoro on stage. Was that the performance, or is that the person's name? I was trying to work that out. But yeah, okay. So that's pretty cool. And again, these kind of modern kind of interpretations of kind of stuff, and especially with puppetries involved, and things that just go that extra mile and stuff. And another one on my list is Cirque du Soleil, which it kind of branches across into circus, circus display, but it's usually in a big theatre, and the music sort of stuff, it kind of steps across this kind of performance to spectacular performance, of where I remember being so tense and watching, and is it Royal Albert Hall, where Cirque du Soleil was performing, of these kind of mind-blowing stunts and skills and you're just there kind of going, are they going to survive this? It was mind-blowing, really. And so I think there is this kind of broader area of theatrical and mesmerised and kind of ability, which goes beyond different interpretations of older works. There's also something really powerful of being in the same room as the person singing. There's a thing that I don't get watched. Yes, there is, isn't there? There's that real kind of emotive kind of just in the soul, isn't there, about somebody singing live in front of you and feeling that kind of almost that vibration in the room, which even with like a big PA system and a band, the music kind of moves you, but actually when there's somebody singing so immaculately and perfectly in that kind of what they're doing. And again, it's like Cirque du Soleil, isn't it? It's when someone's at the top of their game and they're putting their heart, their passion into it, and they're such kind of at the top of their ability, you're just there and you're with them in that moment. And I think kind of when that kind of, as we explore a little bit about faith in this kind of stuff, then actually I think there is something about people laying themselves, or kind of really throwing themselves so much into a character that you feel as if you are their friend, you are on that journey with them, and you kind of get that with cinema. But when you actually have a living, breathing, sweating person on stage who is, even if they slip up, because they're so into character, you can kind of have that moment of just being there, and it's that kind of fly on the wall, that moment of just kind of seeing into someone's life, and whether that is a made up life or a real life, or somebody who's actually performing, and that they're performing from themselves rather than being in character, then I think there is something really kind of close about being human, about being part of their journey or being part of their chapter, even if they are going to repeat it several times in the week. There's that kind of authenticness to it that they're able to really transfer, or kind of really kind of bring across, and I just think that's kind of amazing, really. And I think there's a lot of awe to be found, as in awe, as in AWE, or to be found in kind of performances which are just like amazing, you know. And so I think theatre has that ability to really kind of tap into that real deep down sense of wonder and awe of the human ability, and whether that's human imagination and creativity, like We Will Rock You, which is just weird, but lovely, but also kind of I think we should really reference Cats at this point as well when we're talking about weird and imaginative. And just as a side story, I remember going to see that with Becky, and I'm there kind of going, so what's this? And we got halfway through, and I was like, oh, this is great. We're doing an awful lot about introductions. When does the story start? And Becky's there kind of going, what? What are you doing to this? You know. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Emma. Sorry, Luke. My Neighbour Totoro is an anime film they've done on a set. Thank you. I was trying to make sense of that. I was there going, oh, we're her neighbour. Thank you for that clarification. That's fantastic. And so, yeah, so I think I was kind of expecting Cats to be like, introductions, and here is the big old story. And I didn't realise it was based on the poem. I know, not educated, but I was there kind of going, oh right, wow, this is all just introductions, and this is all just kind of the, is it T.S. Eliot, kind of his off the back of his poem, okay, and let's not even mention the movie, which I've not seen, for good reason. So yeah, kind of, I think theatre kind of, and that creativity can really kind of resonate, I guess is the word that I was after earlier, resonate with people and kind of the human condition, and can really give you an insight. And seeing kind of Les Mis, you know, for example, and seeing kind of the up, is it too much of an understatement to say uphill kind of challenge for them, and facing the revolution, you know, sorry, spoilers, you know, and that it really moves you, and it really kind of, they are so convincing in character that, yeah, I think it would be unfair if you didn't come away shaken up, or didn't come away kind of going, oh right, okay, wow, and I really kind of feel that challenge, and sometimes it's unsettling, but I think sometimes, especially if you know what I was about to say film, what musical or what show you're going to, if you kind of know what you're expecting anyway, or if you already know the storyline, then you kind of can invest yourself even more into something. So I think I've been to see Jesus Christ Superstar a couple of times, and the ability to then kind of, the first time I saw it, I kind of went, oh wow, this is like the book of Judas. Not that that's a thing, or I don't think it's a thing, but in my head I was like going, wow, this is like from Judas's perspective. And so at first I was a little bit offended by that, as somebody with the faith, but then the second time I went to it, I was like, you know what, I can park that view over there. I'm fine with recognising that this is from a worldly Judas perspective. I'm fine. Put a pin in that. Now I can appreciate the rest of this in much more of a reflective and deeper way of how Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice kind of are able to journey through this and invest in these characters, aware of what's over there, but kind of really kind of kind of enjoy it despite that bit, and I think you can then invest in those characters, individual characters, and that part of the story, whilst ignoring that little bit over there sort of thing. And I think, again, you can sort of do that in film, but there isn't that gravitas of being live with somebody, as it Luke said. It's that physically being in the presence of somebody, sharing that story, whether they're an actor or whether that is a part of their actual life. There is that gravitas and that authenticity, I know, if they're acting, but I think there is something so much more meaningful there, that can carry it really well. And I think you can get kind of, swept away in that. And I think there are maybe examples where that the theatrical nature can sometimes cross over into other things. So somebody, if you're up at the front of church or as a politician, there are times when people can be with you and really kind of get a sense of that kind of closeness and that gravitas. And I think if it's, if it's used in a bad way, or if people are using it for their own gotten game sort of thing, I think that can be really worrying and be, with great power comes great responsibility, as it were. It can the vehicle of which it's used for, it can be used for bad, whereas it could also be used to really instill love and real hope and peace and otherwise. Not to say that sermons should be a performance either, not to say politicians kind of can always do that, but I think there is that special nature of, or that privilege of being able to be in front of people, and you could have that ability to really kind of rouse, to really kind of stir people up, and I think that's got to be something that we are going to be aware of or conscious of as churches, as faith, as politicians, I think as well. And therefore I think in the UK Parliament, not that I was intending to go down this direction, but in UK Parliament, kind of making it assessing of saying, well, actually, if we're giving people this podium space at the box, whatever it's called, actually, what does it mean if they are known to lie, for example, or they've been accused of lying, and been proved to be lying? So it really kind of questions that kind of, what are we giving people space up on stage for, or on kind of otherwise. And coming back to kind of theatre as well, I've been to see a kind of a stand-up comedian who I've really loved on Mock the Week, and then kind of shout out to that, but then kind of the comedian themselves, I've kind of come away being really upset by them, because actually they weren't what I expected, and they kind of knew that they kind of got some of the Mock the Week kind of audience, and then was purposely trying to wind those sort of people up. And so Becky and I kind of came away kind of going, well, that felt really annoying, and it came away with all the wrong feelings, and it made me kind of go, well, I'm not going to go back to see live comedy for some time, because this person has kind of been disrespectful, and therefore I think that can be the opposite end of theatre and musicals, when you kind of, it pushes it the wrong way, and it pushes the buttons the wrong way and otherwise. I feel as if I've been talking for absolutely ages. Is there anybody else who wants to talk about any musical or theatre in particular? Is there anybody who wants to kind of talk about other things that they've done? If you're only just catching up, feel free to comment, and we can go off on a bit of a tangent if you like. But if not, we will carry on. Feel free to post at any point, folks, by the way. And if you're on catch-up, hello. If you want to be part of conversation outside of our normal stream, there is opportunity to be part of our Discord, which is found in the description of wherever we are. Also, if you're wanting and interested in following us and subscribing, then there is kind of, if you're on Facebook, like the page. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. Discord, follow the channel, that kind of stuff. Yes, interesting that yes. It's interesting, Emma, that you mentioned that, because one of my children is very much interested in Bluey coming to the UK, and the youngest was there kind of going, but they're in Australia, aren't they? And I was just like, yeah, but this is them kind of performing over here, and I'm just like, oh, I didn't expect them, because they're 6, so I wasn't expecting them to be as interested in a live performance rather than what's coming dropping on Disney July the 12th or the 15th, which will be the rest of series 3, by the way. If you have Disney Plus and you're sick to death of the 104 plus 27, so 131 episodes of Bluey so far. There will be more episodes of Bluey to come, and even though we have a 6 and 8 year old at home, we still are big fans of Bluey, and as parents we don't mind Bluey as much, but even they get a little bit repetitive, that when you kind of come to tea time and be going, so what we're going to watch, what we're going to do, oh great, more Bluey, the same episodes that we've seen already, but yes, can't wait for the new episodes of Bluey. I think I will talk about Bluey for a moment, because I think there is something very interesting about Bluey that is quite refreshing, and I think I guess in some respects there was a bit of I think there was a little bit of a similar cultural thing with The Simpsons when it came out. That obviously Simpsons and Bluey are not really in the same category other than cartoon families, but I think Simpsons is a bit more brash and a bit more crude, especially when I let the kids watch the PG film and realise how much kind of dodginess is in the film, but we soon turned it off. There was that kind of cultural kind of acceptance of The Simpsons being a little bit for somewhat for everybody in the family, and I think Bluey is the same, but in a much more positive and uplifting sort of way, and I think Bluey is actually really quite sweet, because it has the usual kind of story and lesson to learn, and it's really interesting. It's really 7 minutes long, but you can guarantee that the first 30 seconds or a minute of the episode will have some kind of slight nod or little kind of indication of the lesson that is to be learned through the episode. And as you kind of go on, you kind of go, oh right, okay, this is how it's playing out. And so for the kids, there's this little lesson or this little kind of journey that they go on. But then on another level, there's the kind of how the parents engage with that story, and it's just quite sweet. And there's like these kind of knowing looks that the parents may give to something, and I think that's quite sweet, really, in that it's on one level it's just for the kids, and another the parents can see it. It's the knowing looks, and it's the little comments and the little kind of nudges, you kind of get and kind of go, oh, actually, I get that as a parent. I get you. We're on the same kind of song sheet. So that's kind of really quite sweet, really. Anyway, Bluey is good. And I'm looking forward to the new episodes. Ken, as saw Judges sees at the Bridge Theatre a few years ago when I was part of a Roman crowd. Want to see Guys and Dolls, which is there at the moment. Oh, absolutely. Again, to be part of the crowd, raised interesting thoughts about the difference of being a spectator and a participant, and the parallels with worship and church services. Oh, very much so. Thank you, Ken. Yes. That is interesting, isn't it? Because I think there is something about, and again, when we were talking about the humanity of seeing somebody on stage, I think there is that kind of feeling of being on stage and being vulnerable and being there and trying to be the best be the best kind of iteration of that character that you can possibly be, that you've got to sing everything, remember everything, and there is that pressure of being in the lights and in the hot spotlight, and being kind of, there is a bit of vulnerability there, isn't there? And maybe there is that part of that human connection that that people in the congregation / audience, that they kind of see and they sort of feel, and that's maybe the reverse for the person who is presenting, the person who is acting, I think that is quite an interesting perspective to compare that to worshippers, and when you feel that you're part of something bigger, or whether you feel not part of something. I've been to church services where you're there kind of going, gosh, I feel as if I'm the odd one out here and everyone else is in the moment, and you're there just kind of going, yeah, this isn't my cup of tea. And I think that maybe is something, because again, being part of a crowd, or the kind of when was it, I was part of an ensemble of doing various kind of musical numbers. Is it an ensemble? And it was really nice to be part of a crowd, to sing something, to do kind of funky actions, and to be part of that part of the show. And you can give it your all, and you're in that kind of grouping together, and therefore you don't feel as on the spot, because you're in that kind of, it's like crowd mentality, isn't it, that you've been surrounded by other people. But I think that also helps then, because you feel kind of part of a bigger group, and therefore you're more likely to hang out afterwards, because you're all in that moment, you're in that there's that buzz that you get from performing, and therefore you can kind of, you have that kind of commonality, that thing in common. Again, it reflected as I was a teenager, as a 18, 19-year-old, where we could then go on to the pub afterwards, because we'd all just done that musical numbers, and we were all there kind of having that thing in common, and that moment of glory, of kind of the limelight, and that was fantastic. And I think maybe there is those similar moments of that when you're in a congregation, or when you're in a place where you have that shared experience of singing, that you can kind of also have that moment of being part of something more. And I think that can be quite a special, heart-moving, heart-warming moment, whether that is in one sense as it is part of an ensemble, as part of a group, a crowd in a musical, or as part of church in a congregation. I think there is a distinct difference about performance, one would hope, and I think it is a little bit of a blurring when you have a choir. I'm not going to go too much down that line though, because again that's a slippery slope, and I'm not a big fan of choirs as such, but that's just me. But I realise that I'm a guitarist and I like to hang out in bands, so I kind of get that sort of side of it. It's just not my flavour, I guess. But I can understand the desire to be in a choir, and again, it's that kind of that being part of something bigger. What else have we got here as well? Again, also been to amazing plays which were in Russian, or a stylized Chinese opera version of the famous play. Amazing to be about something greater that transcends language. Yeah, because again, there's like the opera stuff, isn't there, and kind of stuff where actually, for me, it's the Cirque du Soleil, where actually no words are really uttered, but there's music sung and there's actions, and you can kind of, even if you don't understand it, you can see the how people embody it and kind of carry stuff, and really kind of just are so emotive in what they're doing. You're kind of, I guess there's almost like a mesmerized ability. You kind of mesmerized by what they're doing, because actually you want to respect them, and you are there to pay attention. You're not, hopefully you're not going to the theatre to look at your phone, and you shouldn't. But you're there to kind of engage with whatever they are there to do, and therefore, even if you can't understand their words, I think there is something really profound about something that you can't understand in a native tongue, but you can see embodied in their kind of in their acting, in their performance, and I think that's quite spectacular. And I think that's a word I keep on coming back to, is that a film can be fun and you can be there and immersive, but you don't have that physical connection and that spectacle moment of seeing somebody doing something so phenomenally well in that one take, in doing it live, rather than like a film that they've done 40 takes and you've got the best of the crop. There is something there in that, again, in that being kind of open and being what's it called? I used it earlier, but being kind of honest and vulnerable. That's the word I was after, before somebody, and and I think you can, and I think there's plenty of Amdram stuff, and I've seen plenty. Shout out to Jenny, by the way, who kind of do fantastic Amdram stuff, and Mark, Oprah, and Paul, and others. Sorry, I've realised I've got down a slippery slope of individually naming people, but you all do fantastic Amdram, and it's fantastic. Oh, should get rid of Bluey. But there are then those kind of exceptional things where, and I remember. Jesus Christ Superstar, there was, out of all the actors, they were doing fantastically well, and then there's one chappie who I just thought was just in such a different league to everybody else. This was many years ago, and they were doing a collection for children in need or something, and it was at the end of the performance, and this sort of this chappie broke into kind of this Scottish accent. And I was just like, oh wow, he does not sound like his character at all. And I think that for me kind of left me, and 12 years later or 14 years later, I think, to kind of go, oh wow, this guy was such a great character in his role that as he was actually himself on the stage, then kind of trying to encourage people to give to charity. I was there kind of going, he's a different person. He's completely a different person. He has a different accent. He has different intonation of his voice, and I was just amazed by that distinction. And I think being able to do that is really impressive. To kind of, and again, it just shows you that kind of step up of people who are very good and people who are absolutely amazing and spectacular in their roles. But I think it should also be encouraged that I think people are going to start somewhere, and I think actually I am happy to go along and see a very good play and an Amdram play, because I think they could even bring kind of stuff in their own right as well, and whether that's kind of their own take on Joseph or kind of it would be very interesting to see how they can kind of interpret stuff and just give it a good go. Our latest venture to see Joseph in the Technical Dreamcoat, big shout out to Mark, he was fantastic. But there were a couple of people, and unfortunately the main Joseph character forgot the words of what the colours came next in the big number, and it was a bit like, oh come on, but I think we were all there willing him on, trying to sing along and give him the kind of cues, but you could see him kind of frantically losing it on stage, and you were just like, oh come on mate, get there. And again, even in that moment of struggle, I think we were all willing him on, and there wasn't a negative. Well, I hope there wasn't a negative person in the audience in that moment. But you can see of how it could be a struggle. But we were overcoming even those hurdles of it not doing so well. And I've got to put my hand up. There have been times when I've been on stage and I have fluffed up. I've gone wrong, and I'm very grateful for gracious people and people who are able to kind of feed me a line or kind of ad lib in the way that I often do, and so that's why I'm not professional. But I can say though, I have been on stage with an Oscar awarded person, where we were in Little Shop of Horrors, and I was Audrey 2, the plant, and he was Seymour. But I think the completely to give away is actually the fact that he didn't actually get an Oscar for any performance, but music for Gravity. So yes, that's my claim to fame, but actually not really. Anyway, I am aware of time, folks, and it has been a real thrill to talk about theatre and such. If nobody has got anything else to say, then we'll wrap it up. But equally, if there's one last little call out for things, if you've done anything on kind of anything geeky in the last week or otherwise, I forgot to mention that my 3D printer is currently printing, and it is. Yeah, we've I've done the ones. I'm now printing a Mandalorian helmet. The only downside is that I feel as if I'm going to be printing a Mandalorian helmet for quite some time, because it turns out each piece is going to take approximately 18 hours to print. This will be an ongoing project for many hours to come. So yeah, that's been fun this week. But please do pop a comment to say what you've been doing, geeky or otherwise. If you're into Discord, or even if you want to dabble in Discord, 'cause I feel as if I'm still dabbling in Discord really. So if you've got a smartphone, you can download Discord and follow the link in the description of our broadcast, and join the conversation. And so there's various categories there about different ideas what to talk about from week to week, and we are building hopefully next week. Oh, and I should mention next week. Hopefully, as of next week, we should be able to kind of tell you a bit more ahead of time, because we're putting together a bit more of a fixed timetable. We're also moving to Tuesday, which is very important. Basically, my diary has not been able to amend and adjust to Thursdays that well, and I think it's good for continuity. So we're going to try Tuesday, and we're going to give Tuesday a go for the foreseeable future. Yeah, we're going to just see how that goes, and try Tuesday at 8 o'clock in the same places as usual, but that would be hopefully just fits in with my diary better for now. There will occasionally be times when I can't be around, and Becca will be here, and we'll go from there. But we're also going to take August off altogether. We're going to have a proper break and get away and replenish, and you can have a bit of a breather from my dulcet tones. But so remember that there's the Discord community where we can talk about weekly themes, the Geeks Gallery, where you can share photos or comments about what you've been up to in this last week or since we last been on screen. However, I am likely to use those and draw upon those, so don't think that those are just in a little private space. They're going to come up on the show, and we can talk about them in a bit of a, I want to say, Tony Hart art gallery sort of way, if you're that age, that sort of style of showing off our geeky things. And again, geeky things can be various things that we can be geeky about, and and occasionally with a bit of sprinkling of faith too. But anyway, I think it's pretty much to the end of our time. Thank you for joining us, and it's been fun. It's been a little bit of a difference of just being me again, but it's been fun to talk about theatre and musicals, and I'm sure we may have more of a themed musical one a little bit later to talk about, and have more than just me ranting at you. But anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure. Whatever you get up to, I hope you can geek safe, and finally to say, blessed are the geeks. Thank you.